Hello and welcome to another episode of Film Seizure. I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I am Jason Oliver.
And welcome to the first of the next 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Last week we celebrated 100 episodes with...
Boy, what a celebration that was. That still feels like a fever dream.
Yeah. We were sharing mics.
It was chaos.
It was kind of chaotic. We didn't really talk about the movie.
Sure didn't.
But can you blame us?
No, you cannot. 'Cause it's our show, damn it.
It's our show, and we will do with it as we please.
That's right.
Which was essentially my answer to, this is weird that this is the first Luc Besson. And I was like, this is partly my show, and I'm going to do what I want.
Well, yeah, I guess there's a reason, though, why this is episode 101.
Yes, so this week we're talking about Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets.
It's like, I don't know why. Every time I say the title of this, I want to say Valerian in a House of 1,000 Corpses.
Somebody mashed that up.
My brain is fucked. That's just...
Are you sleepy?
I'm very sleepy.
Much like our lead hero,
Dane DeYan.
We'll explain all of this later.
Yes,
don't worry. Yes. Valerian and the City of 1,000 Corpses.
See, now you're screwed up.
Now I'm fucked. Yeah. So this stars Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne. I'm pronouncing that so Jason doesn't embarrass himself.
I have it written phonetically on my notes so that I don't screw it up. I will probably still screw it up.
Yeah. And Clive Owen. And Rihanna.
Rihanna. Yeah.
We'll dig more into that here in just a moment. But
and Ethan Hawke.
Oh yeah, Ethan Hawke's looking like he's having a grand old time.
Oh yeah, he's almost unrecognizable. It's weird. It's like one of those magic eyes.
Yeah.
You know, can't see it until you see it. It's like, right. Holy shit! Wait a minute. Stare at it long enough, it turns into Ethan Hawke.
Which I think is what you said in the movie theater.
Yeah, I think it was.
Oh my God, that's Ethan Hawke.
Oh my God, that's Ethan Hawke.
So let's take it back a few years to the summer of 2017. And let's talk about why this is episode 101.
101. Yeah. So we watched this movie together.
Right. We watched this movie.
I mean, we've seen a lot of movies together. But this one I felt like we were the only people we knew who were excited about it, for one thing, which was weird.
It looked fucking awesome.
It did look awesome. And it was kind of a return to sci-fi for Luc Besson.
Yep.
Which we were excited about. I know that I'm a pretty big fan of The Fifth Element. There's a lot of really imaginative, sort of high concept science fiction in that. Even though it does get a little hokey towards the end of that movie. It's one we'll probably cover one day, I would think.
Oh,
Besson has a bit of a flair for the melodrama, especially like the theme of love. He gets very flowery
he's Frenchy.
It. Yeah, he's very Frenchy.
Yeah.
And this has a little bit of that too, but not quite as heavy-handed as the Fifth Element, I don't think. But anyway, we were
in different ways.
Yeah,
it's heavy-handed in different ways, but not a unexpected tone.
Yeah.
In this movie, from the first moment of this movie, or from the first moment post credits, which we're going to talk about that credit scene.
Yes.
But from the first moment, it's all about being in love. Yeah, and so, but that's it's an undertone that carries itself out to be an overtone at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, we went to see this movie, and we got some wangs.
Some wangs
afterwards.
Not some wangs. We got to be careful.
We found the local glory hole. And
Episode 101, off to a great start.
Jeez, oh Pete.
Jeez, oh Pete. That's the name of the glory hole. Oh, jeez.
Oh, my gosh. Let's try this again. So we went to go get some lunch and talk about the movie because guess what? You might have guessed, Jeff and I like to talk about movies. And we like to talk about movies together. It's kind of our thing.
It is our entire dynamic. And it also served as the exact same day after, because the plan was after lunch, we'll go back to my place, and we'll talk about the show that would eventually become Film Seizure. So it was all kind of part of this grand planning session. And I think it was pretty much decided by the time that we were done talking about what we were talking about, that we had decided, it's like, yeah, that shit that we were doing at Wings, etc., is exactly what the show will probably be.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a weird proof of concept for us.
Yeah. So, we didn't cover it for episode number 1. We didn't cover it in the first one. We didn't do it for the 100th. Although maybe we should have.
Yeah.
But, what better way to start the next 100?
Kick off the next 100. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I think also we are generally the only two people who actually generally and genuinely like this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, some people like it. I imagine everybody in the movie liked the movie.
I think it's one of those movies where generally audiences liked it if they actually went to see it, but the critics didn't like it.
And it didn't miss the fresh-o-meter by very much. It may have even actually been just over fresh, like just over the 60% threshold on Rotten Tomatoes, but. There were, some of the critiques that I had heard. 1, it was a little too long. 2, it was a little overstuffed. 3, it's a little hollow. To a certain extent, I understand each and every one of those claims.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like this movie, man.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
No, and we'll talk about the things that aren't that great about this movie.
It sort of floats in the John Carter realm for me.
Yes.
Right? Where it's much better than I think its reputation. And it is, it's just a really fun science fiction, science fantasy ride.
Yeah, it's a little adventurous movie.
Very, very, very high on adventure. Very, very imaginative.
It's very pretty.
Very, very pretty. Very well constructed. The art direction is phenomenal. Just all of the little background things that are happening.
Oh yeah, what did they say? Oh, they're at this big giant market. We'll talk about the market.
Oh,
and especially the line.
Big market.
And I was like, oh my god, look over there off to the side, like the very side of the screen is a little floating mushroom man. Yeah. It's like,
it's just chock packed full of detail, it just shows that this was made with a loving care by someone who really loved the source material passionately, and you could tell it was a passion project.
Yes. So the source material of this is, Luc Besson grew up like many French children did of his generation, and still to a certain extent to this day, grew up reading comic books. There are 4 primary producers of original content in comic books: the United States and Japan, of course. Japan being biggest. When a manga hits over there, it hits big. Then you have Italy, which we talked about earlier in 2019 with Dylan Dog. And Italy has a huge comic book market, but it's pretty much self-contained. But, Dylan Dog is still an adult reader or adult read comic book to this day. And there are plenty of younger books too over there, but and then there's France, and both France and Italy. And actually what you'll notice a lot of the times are that there are several Spanish speaking artists and writers that end up going to Italy or going to or they come out of South America to work on a French book or on a Italian comic or something like that, and eventually find their way over here. There are a ton of Spanish artists now. Getting into that, but there's really that's not really connected to this because both the creators, Pierre Christine and Jean-Claude Mézières.
Boy, those are not French names at all.
Right.
My goodness.
Yeah,
it's like French name generator right there.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. They created Valerian, and actually the book is called Valerian et or Laureline et Ming Anne.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
I took a little French.
I do remember that from my 8th grade French.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Valerian and Laureline. Most of the time, the Anne Laureline gets dropped off these days, which is unfortunate because she's probably the best character.
She absolutely is the best character.
And she's the most fascinating character because she is about 900 years displaced in time in the comic books.
Interesting.
She's picked up by Valerian while he's in the past in like 15th or 16th century France or something like that, and she just wants to come along for the adventure, and she is a better agent than he is. She's surprisingly competent in all this crazy future wacky shit that she ends up seeing. So anyway, but it's unfortunate that her name gets dropped off, and she's a very early example of an extremely strong female character that it almost comes down to her background is almost incidental. She's just a good character, and she keeps Valerian centered and on task, and and it's like oftentimes in each of the books, and the book started in the late 60s and just finished up a couple of years ago, I think, or a few years ago. They were often in many of the plots have to separate and go off and do things separately, and like sometimes they're separated by time or space, so it's like they have to be competent in what they do, but every story has like a two-part or a two-sided adventure, one for Laureline and one for Valerian most of the time. Now some of them will have where they're doing a lot of things together, but they each have their own separate not mission, but
side quest.
Well, both of them may be working on the same thing at the same place, but they're doing things in a different path to get to basically complete the mission or whatever. So it's a fascinating book, and what I love about the book, and I've read a little bit more than half of the books. What I love about them is that they're super imaginative. I mean, like, these are not monthly comics. They usually came out once every couple of years or so. And they're about 60 pages, 70 pages maybe at most. And they are super duper dense. And, like, they set it, they're very good at setting up, here's what's going on, here's the complicated history of this thing in like 3 comic book panels, and here's what Valerian and Laureline have to accomplish. And then it goes, and it's very you have very, very imaginative planets that they go to. Concepts are very interesting because it uses time and space and extra dimensions. There's no two aliens will ever look the same. Even if they're from the same alien race, each character will look different in some way. It's super, it's very expressive. It's very interesting. It's a gorgeous comic book. And it's very simple in how it's drawn and kind of how it lays out on the page. And it's still very, very, very dynamic and very, very interesting to look at.
And you were kind of saying that the movie is sort of a hodgepodge of a few different stories.
Yeah, the two primary ones are book 6 and 7. Book 6 was Empire of a Thousand Planets, and then book 7 was Ambassador of Shadows. And a lot of the concepts in this come from those two books. The three little information dealers, the little she calls them pigeons at one point. The idea that they have to protect the ranking officer of the time spatio department agency or whatever. They have to so like and the little converter animal creature thing that you feed it something and it reproduces it like until it's out of energy, basically just shitting out like whatever it is that you fed it. And it's that all that stuff comes from those two books pretty much. The kidnapping plot and the goopy bubbly stuff that they get trapped in and stuff like that. That's all of that stuff comes from those two stories.
So let's talk a little bit about how this movie begins, because to me, it's one of the great movie opening scenes.
And boy, do we have another one next week.
And we have another one next week to talk about. Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of interesting, both based on graphic novels.
Yep. Wink, wink.
Aha. Yes.
No spoilers till the end.
But I really, really like the opening sequence. It's Space Oddity by David Bowie is the song that's playing over the opening credit sequence, and it's basically the origins of the space station, the International Space Station, right? And it's out in orbit around Earth.
It starts with like just the beginning of space travel, right?
Yeah.
Like just like the old school like film of the Apollo missions and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the history of space travels essentially, but
for humans,
and then it goes beyond that into the future. And it's imagining, what it would be like if, all of the different nations on Earth are able to, come to space and meet on the space station and have this commonality between them and this achievement that they have together. And it's kind of like we can't have peace on Earth, but maybe we can have peace in space, right?
Which is something else that's kind of covered in like 2010. Yeah, is that those kind of classic ideas that when you're separated from the Earth, you're all just the same.
And I think it also speaks to some of what you hear about astronauts when they go to space and they see the Earth from space and how the magnitude of that is so emotional that it gives you a completely different perspective on your own humanity. Right. And so to have that commonality in space between people, between different types of, different nations and different races, it's like, oh man, none of this matters. Right.
Yeah. Cause it begins like, okay, so it starts with that and then they build a little space station. The Chinese come and meet the Americans. And then a little bit later passes. And now it's kind of a united Earth,
right?
Several different
and the council of humans that greet each new emissary grows, right. So you have these this is kind of a council of nations,
right?
But then it gets really fun because as time passes, all of these alien races are starting to find the station,
and they get weirder and weirder. Yeah.
And it's
there's like a little blowfish guy in like a humanoid suit of water. It's so great.
It's kind of like an old style diver suit. But
inside the chest is like a little blowfish guy.
Yeah. There's all these strange and really fascinating creature designs.
And as more and more of these creatures come in, fewer and fewer reaction from the humans of what they're seeing, because hey, we're all just travelers,
right? We're not surprised anymore. This is amazing. This universe is vast,
and they're coming to us and they're connecting to us. And so they're starting to share that technology. It gets to the point where it's so massive it can't stay in Earth's orbit, so they send it off into the Magellan, whatever that was called. basically just a far out reach of space where people can still continue to come together and build onto and it's the same idea is kind of there in the comics, except for Earth becomes a member of that. They didn't create it. But it's the idea that it's a meeting spot, and it's supposed to be neutral space, and it's it's just people adding their culture to the large city. Basically, you always hear that thing like, what's the Borg? What do they say? The we'll add your distinctiveness to our own. It's kind of the same idea, except you're just augmenting this giant station into this massive it's practically a planet of its own.
But then, that's kind of, it's sort of like this really shitty cycle of life, of intelligent life, is that this planet now essentially is what it is, that grew from these very humble beginnings with great intentions, and this spirit of unity has become factioned. Yeah, it is now. It's very separate into different zones and areas. There are zones where humans aren't allowed to go, and there are zones where other species aren't allowed to go. And if you do, what do they call it? It will cause a diplomatic incident. Right.
Yeah. And of course, who's in charge of everything? The humans.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you're not even near Earth, and whereas before in that sort of situation, the closer they were to Earth, the more open they were to these other creatures. But once they got further away, they just reverted back to their superiority complex.
If this movie came out in this world, there would be a right wing that would be complaining about human guilt. That's more of that human guilt they're trying to feed us.
It's trying to cram their love down our throat.
That Homo sapien guilt.
Yeah. Yeah. So you throughout the course of this, of this entire opening credit sequence, you're just seeing the history of space when it comes to humans. So then what happens is you get taken to this gorgeous, utopian planet where these kind of in a sort of way, they kind of almost look like they could be like an offshoot of the Avatar people.
I was actually gonna say they're more interesting. Than the Na'vi, and a thing that I kept kind of creeping into my brain as I watched this movie is, my God, this is just a much more interesting movie than Avatar. Very similar thematic tones throughout, but just more interesting.
Yeah. A little bit more interesting. A little bit. How should I say this? A little bit more dense.
Yeah, way more.
But
dense.
Not dense as in that guy's dense. This is a dense story that's got a lot of interesting elements going on in it.
Yeah, well, you know what it is? I think that the story of Valerian is not all that original at its core.
No.
But it's what it's layered with in the ideas and the concepts and the art direction.
Well, and the way they play with the characters, the way that they play with the alien characters, in particular, especially those big gloppy guys at the end, where when they kidnap Laureline, and you got the one that just wants to give her a dress. And they're just trying to find a dress that she likes, and it's just got this dumb look on its face, And it's so excited when she has something to like what she thinks is something positive,
right?
It's stuff like that. It's more fun.
It's way more fun. Like, Avatar just feels like this. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen Avatar.
Felt preachy.
I think, sure did. I think I only ever saw it that one time in the theater, and that's
the only time I saw it.
And I just kind of walked out like, that was what everyone is
like. Well, Stephen Lang is pretty funny. Yeah. I don't know if he meant to be, but he is.
But it's. I mean, if you want to talk about derivative, man, Avatar is derivative of a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, we get to have 4 fucking more of those movies, but we probably won't get another Valerian movie.
Sadly, no.
Yeah. Anyway.
So then this planet, you get to spend about 5-10 minutes on this planet, understanding their culture, understanding their life, practically not knowing what they're saying to each other, but knowing what they're saying to one another.
Yeah, they're communicating.
Yes,
regardless of whether they can understand what each other say. What each other say.
Well, they're communicating whether or not we can understand what they're saying.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't the.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought we were still talking about the opening sequence. Yes, down on the beach planet.
Mule.
Yeah. M-U-L.
Yes.
Yes.
Mule. Mule. And they are this race of beings are called the Pearls.
Yeah.
And they fish and farm pearls that are an energy source. I wonder what humanity, aka Whitey, wants with that. Anyway,
but what's interesting, what I do enjoy about that, about the destruction, what I enjoy about destruction of this planet is not really what I meant, but what is sort of different about this is that the white man or the human, the human doesn't even know anything about the resources of this planet. Just thinks it's inhabited by natives who are insignificant to the march forward of progress of humanity.
Right.
Right.
So we got to blow this fucking.
So they're fighting a battle in space with another alien species,
and they just want total annihilation of that other species.
And this planet is just in the way.
Yeah.
So they're not really after its resources. It's just collateral damage.
Yeah, and it's like, if we don't destroy our enemy, then we will lose. So fuck those people down there. They are savages.
Yes.
Yes.
They're beneath us.
I wonder what that might be
Yeah.
I mean, from our perspective as North Americans.
Yeah, I can't imagine anything like westward expansion now.
I mean, they might as well just, loaded up those ships with like fucking smallpox and dropped it on the planet,
Yeah.
Man, we're
getting there.
We're getting feisty here. We're punchy.
Yeah.
So 30 years later, or actually as this planet is dying, there's the battles happening, all these pieces of these giant spaceships are falling on the Mule, really kind of causing a big problem. I mean, everybody's scared. I would be too.
It's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge problem.
It's an apocalyptic problem.
Yeah. Right. The humans detonate basically a doomsday weapon that not only destroys the enemy ship, but Mule.
Well, what happens is it destroys the enemy ship, but the enemy ship is so huge and it gets sucked into the planet's gravity that it's like a giant asteroid that crash lands on this planet and wipes it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of the pearls were able to lock themselves away into a piece of the fuselage of one of the ships that crashed. And unfortunately the king and queen of the pearls I don't know. Yeah, the king and queen, or emperor, whatever they call themselves, the royal couple, their daughter was left outside, and the door handle broke, so they couldn't let her in to be saved, and so she basically kind of sacrifices herself to send her soul. Yeah. Out into the stars. Now that's explained a little bit later, but she releases this energy it kind of hits Valerian.
When the Mule people die, they release an energy source of their soul, essentially.
Yeah, it's a psychic and energy. Yeah,
and they say sometimes it finds a host where
a caretaker of the soul.
That helps it move into the afterlife or whatever. Yeah.
And so, that lands what we learn later. It lands into Valerian. And
yes.
So Valerian and Laureline are playing some sexy games in a holodeck. But they only have 3 minutes. And that's not going to be enough to satisfy Laureline.
No, not enough time for Laureline. Probably enough time for Valerian.
Because yes.
But Laureline's not really having it.
Laureline.
Do I have to write that down?
Maybe. I'm going to correct you like a fucking pedant.
Laura.
I'm going to be real pedantic about some of these pronunciations.
Laureline.
Yes.
Anyway, but yeah, you can. This is, I think, one of the weaker parts of this story. It's not necessarily the story, but of the of their performances. I think are the believability of the chemistry between
That's something I was going to bring up.
Dane DeHaan and
Cara
Cara
Delevingne.
Delevingne. Yeah,
You were looking for
I
your...
was looking for my notes.
Yeah.
Dane DeHaan and Cara
Cara Delevingne.
Delevingne. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that I like Cara Delevingne in this. Like I can't keep getting that mixed up now with Laureline. So now I'm really in trouble. All right. So I like Cara Delevingne in this. I think that she's not really a natural actress, but I think she does really well.
Yeah, I mean she's a she's a model by original trade.
She's a very expressive.
Yes.
She's very sarcastic.
She has very good ways of acting with her eyes.
Yeah. Yes.
She has like a glint, and that comes from modeling. I mean, it's got to come from modeling.
She's got the blue
Smize.
steel. She's got the blue steel. Yeah.
She smizes.
But then Dane DeHaan is not the most charismatic guy to begin with.
Yeah.
And so those two together, I feel like they don't really play as well off of each other as I would like. Like you want them to be Han Solo and Leia.
And Princess Leia.
But they just don't have that magnetism.
You can tell that they like each other as people.
Sure.
Beyond the film, right? You can tell that they like each other, right? You could probably tell that they spent some time hanging out, just getting to know each other, because they have so many scenes together and they have a lot of dialogue with one another.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things that I am conflicted about in this movie, because for one thing, I never felt that in the comic books their relationship was so thrusted upon the reader, the audience. I always kind of felt like they were already kind of a couple, just in between the pages or in between books, you know. They're not... It feels like in this that there has to be you have to understand that she makes Valerian better.
Yeah.
So he is naturally swept up into that, which in the comics is done so much more. It's toned down so much more, but it still reads through
A little more effortless.
Yeah. In this, it's a lot of shtick. It's a lot of couple shtick that when you see it at like the fucking Walmart, you just want to punch those lovebirds with your fists. You know, and it's like I'm not here. I'm here to buy some motherfucking toilet paper, not hear your shtick. But
That was like stand up voice.
a
Jeff
little
right
bit.
there, yeah.
That was almost a little Cosby.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Be careful there.
Not here for your stick.
Tread carefully
I'm non-rapey cop.
with the cows talk.
Yeah. Anyway, but at the same time, I wouldn't have wanted them to not be playful with one another.
I think that
Because the playfulness does work in the context of the fun.
I think the playfulness would work better with a stronger male lead. I just don't really care for Dane DeHaan so much in this role. I think he's better.
Imagine if this
he's better when he's sort of being like the adventure man. He's not so good to me at the playfulness in their relationship.
At the quickfire the quickfire dialogue. Imagine if this was Zac Efron and Cara Delevingne.
I think that would work. Yeah.
Because, okay, so here's the thing. Luc Besson really knows the Valerian and Laureline comics. And I'm not going to say that I really know him as well as anybody.
That honestly would have sold more tickets too.
Sure. But I will say that, yes, Valerian 100% is very cavalier in his job. He is very much Space James Bond. This comes out during the height of James Bond's popularity in the comic world.
Yeah.
He is essentially time traveling Space James Bond. And Laureline is more than just a Bond girl. She's an equal, and so they do kind of get that right, that he is kind of full of himself. However, they play up that wall between them a little bit too long, where, what they needed in the first act was for that moment to shine through where he can finally, where the wall falls down between them. And there's a common understanding that they can't live without each other, or that they're better off with one another. There's moments where it could happen, and there's moments where you see it, but as the audience, you're there already, and the characters aren't. And it's like, oh, come on, characters, can you catch up to this?
Yeah, and yes, and to your point too, is I don't really feel like that even had to be the conflict in their relationship, this romantic interest, right?
Well, they could, what they could have been. You could have had them already together, and she's shitty at him for fucking up the previous mission or something.
Yeah,
that happens all the time in the comics, where he's a little too cavalier when it served better to be more focused as she is.
Mm-hmm. Sure. But yeah, that's one of my problems with the movie, is that their dynamic isn't as strong as I think it should be. I really just, Dane DeHaan is fine, but it could have been a more enjoyable character. I think, and it's your main character.
Yeah.
If it had been played by
the title character,
played by somebody who was a little more charismatic, maybe not necessarily Zac Efron. I understand that Luc Besson is probably looking for someone that's a little bit more of an international actor in those roles, and not really wanting to pander to U.S. audiences. But at the same time, it's like, this is your biggest market, buddy. You probably want somebody that people are gonna want to see. And I'm sure there were a lot of people like, who the fuck are these people in this movie?
Luckily, she had already been in Suicide Squad.
Yes, that is true. That
so
helps.
It's like, oh yeah,
and
okay.
People knew who she was, and also pretty. Sorry, but just unbelievably beautiful woman. Dane DeHaan, I don't think anyone would even call handsome. Honestly, he's so sleepy.
Throwing the gauntlet.
He's so damn sleepy all the time. Like, he just looks like he's always short on sleep.
I don't know for sure, but I'm gonna guess that some people find that
he's got it like a thing.
Well, it's like people. The Harrison Ford kind of thing. Yeah. It's like there's an understated thing there, but
I do like Dane DeHaan and other things. Like, he actually played a fine Harry Osborn, didn't he? Wasn't it him?
Oh yeah, that movie sucked though.
Yeah, but he was fine in the role.
He was fine. Well, he was fine playing that guy who was the rich turd, basically, like rich turd.
Right. He was really good in that Gore Verbinski horror movie, Cure for Wellness. I liked that.
Oh yeah, he was in that.
I liked
too,
that movie. I liked him in that movie. I don't have anything against Dane DeHaan. I just don't think he was right for this role.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, we could recast that all day. I would not recast Laureline.
I would not either.
Because again, Cara Delevingne can act with her eyes.
Yeah.
And you can see when she's frustrated. Mm-hmm. You can see when she is confident. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't have to change the tone of her voice much.
Yeah.
Which brings us to maybe the worst thing in this movie.
Well, this, I think, is probably what Luc Besson thought was, I need to put a really recognizable American star in this movie,
not thinking that there's another element to. There's a reason why she's a star in one way and not another.
Yeah, yeah. This was a big mistake.
So throughout the course of this movie, it gets to the Laureline gets kidnapped by these big fatty aliens. It fat shames. So terrible. Disgusting how they fat shame these poor tribal aliens.
Yes, they just are
just doing their thing. They're just fishing for butterflies.
These gluttonous globs.
Yeah.
Fishing with butterflies.
With butterflies. So
they're gluttonous globs. I mean,
they were gluttonous globs. That was probably their name.
The king himself was just like a line of people serving him different dishes.
He also had an entire body of chins.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, he really needs to go on a diet. Anyway,
well, he dead now.
He lost his head.
Yeah.
He lost his mind. So anyway, so the problem is that humans cannot go into these gluttonous globs home world. It would create a diplomatic issue or situation. So Valerian has to go into basically the red light district that neighbors the other place, because he has to find, what do they call
what
was that called?
A glamour glob.
Yeah,
something like that.
Anyway, so he goes to essentially a burlesque club that is run by, well, it's not a burlesque club, it's a fucking it's a
brothel.
It's a brothel.
Yeah.
But they'll do a little show for you before you get your kicks, get your rocks off, get your globs off.
A glamopod.
That's it. Glamour glob. I like that.
Close.
I like that.
Glamour glob. It's close.
Glamour glob.
Glamopod.
So he meets up with Ethan Hawke, who is the pimp, and he's like, yeah, I'm looking for a glamour rod.
You need to write this down.
Glamour pod.
Glamopod.
He's like, oh, lucky for you, I got one. Let's go in there. It's like out walks, very, very nicely dressed. Take that and run with your imagination. Rihanna.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, wow, I am on board with these visuals, because there's these very cool things that these glamopods can do, which is change their features and change the way they look. They can shapeshift. And so she's doing this dance, and it's very well choreographed.
Uh-huh.
It's very burlesque.
Yeah, the idea is that she could be anything you want her to be.
So she'll make a move, and she'll be dressed like a sexy nurse, or a French maid, or a schoolgirl.
We were zeroing in on the same ones apparently.
Well, I'm just going through the whole thing. At one point, she was like a torch singer. So it's like all these, and it's like phenomenal. The effect is cool. It's pretty sexy. It's fun. It's neat. It's showing off the imagination of this world.
Yes, and it all in one too. It's showing you that this species has been exploited by this, essentially the sex trade.
Yeah.
So it's got this depth to the character as well. It's kind of like all very layered and interesting.
Yes, and also it plays to something that Laureline bitches about with Valerian. Valerian wants to marry her, but he keeps a running total of all the conquests that he has, and he calls it his playlist. And so now he's faced with this sexy situation, and he has to work with this person intimately.
Yeah.
And by intimately, he needs to crawl inside her, and she needs to take the form of the creatures so that they can travel into their territory.
Right.
It's an interesting scene. It's a fun scene. It's a sexy scene. Everything about the scene works until
Rihanna speaks.
She does not have a very good acting voice.
No. In fact, I don't think she understands how to express emotions when acting.
She has a very monotone voice. And I picked up on this originally when I watched that shit-tacular Battleship movie.
Oh, God.
That movie sucked.
That movie,
she is a tentpole character in that movie.
I mean, you could put goddamn Meryl Streep in that movie and it'd still suck. It might suck more in some ways.
No, it wouldn't. Because it'd be like, she was in this movie?
It almost makes it fucking like must-see TV, right?
Right. So she is just, I mean,
she's very flat.
She's very flat. She's a great presence. She's a great dancer. She's a great singer. All of those things I'm not going to argue anybody with. But she can't really act.
She's not a good actor. There was a moment, oh God, where she's trying to actually be funny during and after the throne room fight scene,
right, where they save Laureline.
And it's just like she keeps saying words, and I just keep wanting her to stop saying them.
Because what's happening on screen is Laureline realizing what lengths Valerian would go to save her, and they're having like they're like right at that moment where they're about to kiss, and it's like you got this jabberjaws going on in the background that's not even on camera, and it's like, oh my God, you're ruining it.
It's atrocious.
It's bad. It's really bad.
It takes me way the fuck out of it. In fact, so
every
much
scene that she's in is great if the audio is off. If they just simply overdubbed her with one of the voices that played the pearls, it would have been phenomenal. It would have been phenomenal.
And there's a really important scene with her in the moment of her death.
Oh yeah,
for the growth of Valerian, for the growth of his heart, his soul, right, of his character, that is just ruined by Aaliyah's, or I called her Aaliyah.
Yeah, she's
Yikes.
dead. She is dead, really.
By Rihanna's
yes
acting. Rihanna was actually, Aaliyah was a good actress.
She was.
She was very good.
She was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's ruined. The scene is ruined. I'm actually so happy that she dies, because I know that she's not going to be in the rest of the movie.
Right.
It's a relief.
It is. And it's a thing where you don't really want that character to die.
No.
You don't. Because, I mean, again, you say there's a lot of really neat and interesting ideas with that character that, that if she lived, you could redeem, she could have something to live for beyond just being a sex doll.
Right. But you feel it, that the character, Rihanna's performance feels like this anchor immediately on the movie.
Where it's we're stuck with her.
And then when the character dies, you're just like, oh, thank goodness.
And immediately the quality of the movie jumps back up again to a really, really
it's like, okay, we're moving
neat
again.
ending.
Yep.
To a really neat final act. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate
it's
because
a shame.
It is unfortunate because I do like this movie a lot. And again, I like what was brought in with Rihanna. It's just not there. Her voice is just not suitable. Particularly when she ultimately has to voice the character in its natural form, which is essentially a cartoon.
Yeah.
It's like I said to you, you always know when somebody guest stars on The Simpsons who is not used to doing voice work, who is always acting on screen, never really doing any voiceover work or doing any kind of, maybe some voiceover work, because everybody at some point has to do some ADR, but is not used to doing extended dialogue of voice acting, because it just sounds like they don't know how to talk.
Yeah.
They don't know how to emote properly.
To go back a little bit, before the character of Bubble appears, the first really kind of big action adventure scene with Valerian and Laureline is this really, it's super cool, man. It's the multi-dimension market, right? Yeah. Big market. Big market. That character kills me.
And he's just such a bit character.
He feels a little bit like Ruby from Fifth Element, a little bit.
Oh yeah,
like very over the top.
Yeah, very flamboyant.
Very flamboyant. Yeah. God, it kills me. But that's just a really cool idea. If you have this desert, right, with a wall around it, and there's really not much going on inside these walls, these desert
You see
walls.
like a dozen people roaming about.
Yeah, but there's a there are all these gates, and you go through these gates, and you put on these gloves and these masks, and you actually are experiencing, can interact with and see this other dimension, which is Big Market,
Which is a gigantic bazaar.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's bizarre.
it's a bizarre bazaar.
Yeah.
yeah. And I love it. And then there's ways that you can also, you're not allowed to actually bring any item from your dimension into this dimension, but there are ways that you can, by way of these genetic boxes that you can lock your hand into with an item, and that part of you that's in this box can exist in that dimension, but the rest of you is really in your own dimension.
Yeah, it is.
It's wild.
It's
stuff.
wild.
I mean,
This is true sci-fi.
yeah, it's some hard sci-fi stuff. These concepts of just the fact that you can visit as an avatar, kind of these other dimensions, and shop there and bring real items back, because they put them in these converters.
Yeah,
when you
these
purchase them.
transdimensional like converter.
Yeah. So
people can come and go from that too. Like,
Yeah.
they live in this other dimension, but they can also come back out by going through basically the same like a portal, basically, or whatever. It's wild, man.
It's super wild, and it takes a minute to acclimate to it, to kind of wrap your brain around the physics of all of it, which I love. You know you're seeing something new and something interesting when you're trying to figure out how it all works.
Good sci-fi will meld things from your current day real world, like their clothing, the idea that you're going to this desert bazaar,
Yeah.
the idea that you're just doing a heist essentially, but then you mix in the sci-fi element, this element that you can't even imagine imagining.
Yeah.
That's when sci-fi works.
Yeah.
Everything about Valerian, whether it's the comic or this movie, kind of has that feel to it. There are many, many, many stories of the Valerian book that happens in present day Earth, but Valerian and Laureline are in two different time frames. She's halfway across the galaxy, and they're communicating mentally with one another. And that's just like, how did you even come up with that? I mean, was it copious amounts of drugs? What is it was it just I'm just going to pull some shit out of a bag and then, okay, that's our concept. Yeah. What is that? I mean, I can't even imagining some of that stuff. And I'm a pretty imaginative dude.
Well, and I mean, as the scene progresses and moves along, there are so many layers of ideas in this. You have the dart gun that when you shoot somebody with it, you can kind of remotely take over their physical functions.
Yeah.
Right. And you can see through their eyes by wearing this visor.
Yeah.
Right. And essentially you take remote control of their body.
Yeah. And it's a little bit of a virtual reality type of thing. Yeah.
And then you've got so fascinated by the little magnetic balls.
Oh yeah, it's a non-lethal way to basically stop somebody running away from you. You shoot these balls at them. It locks on. So one ball hits them, and the other balls lock onto it.
Yeah.
And it basically encases a thing or a person, and then its weight returns, and then you're stopped. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating.
It's super fascinating. And you get the sense, too, that it was probably developed to stop people who were bringing in those, like weapons and things with those metal boxes, right? With their hands.
Just metal boxes that you're not supposed to have there.
Right. Like, so it was specifically designed to stop people like Valerian from doing what he's doing. But yet, you're figuring all of this out, but this is all very, very much realized in this world already.
Right.
It's it's just a fun, super cool scene.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that big market.
It's a big market. And then you find out that there's different levels.
Yeah. So the main market is on the ground level, but then there's like these manholes that go into these other levels that are also in another dimension, and like Valerian falls through when he's got the balls on his arm. falls through like 10 levels. I mean, it's just so dense. It's
Yeah.
just so fucking dense.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you could do a whole movie there.
Oh,
The whole movie could have been there.
If we would have gotten a sequel, you could have just implanted them in and have them do a mission at the market.
Yep.
You know, I mean, this could have been a trilogy from some of the things that you see in this movie, where they could have expanded the market, they could have expanded the 1,000 planets, and then have the final part be underneath the 1,000 planets in the old antiquity, which that was another thing I like.
It's really neat
when they get into the very core of the Alpha, which is the planet, basically the amalgamated planet. You start seeing older and older things where, like, at one point they pass like this piece of hull that has the Chinese flag on it, you know, and it's I like that. You don't forget that this is all built on top of itself.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that same idea, like Planet of the Apes, where New York City was underneath.
Yeah.
Because everything, I mean, there was a Holocaust and then everything built on top of it. Yeah, I just like that sort of stuff.
It is. It's very cool.
So another thing I wanted to bring up was when we were talking about this movie 2.5 years ago, or whenever that was, I said, well, we were trying to figure out exactly how we felt about this movie, because it's kind of a weird movie. It's kind of made weirdly. It feels weird. And I said, well, you know what this really feels like? This feels like a movie that was meant to be translated.
Oh, yeah.
Into every language.
Yeah.
Which is kind of part of the movie, right? Like, it's part of it is that whole idea of humanity coming together and everybody growing together. But this movie has a very, very international feel to it.
Yeah, because we were discussing the fact that some of the dialogue is just a little generic.
So at times it seems clunky.
Yeah, and then you had that spark of a thought where, oh, you know what? Maybe it's just easier to translate. You know,
it's also a French man writing,
right?
Or working on a movie that's in English natively, but then can it go back to French, or they're thinking it from a French
right? Right. Yeah, certainly.
And obviously, there's a ton of Chinese money. I mean, there is Chinese letters in the credits.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's obviously an international
very much
intent
so.
to this.
Very
movie.
much so. EuropaCorp.
EuropaCorp is what most of Besson's stuff comes from, right?
Yeah. And it was
and STX is the Asian company, right?
Yes. Yes, I think that's right.
Because there's a whole story about the international financing of this, and
STX. Yeah.
And the kind of the unfortunate nature of this not doing so well is that it's going to be really, really hard for companies to want to do something fascinating anymore.
Well, it's also one of those things where there were so many different interests involved in the way it was funded internationally. It's almost like it didn't lose any one person a lot of money.
But collectively, it lost a lot of money.
Yeah, but not a ton. Like I think that the box office was $226 million. I think with all the promotional and production costs all told, I think what I read was it needed to make $400 million to break even. So yes, people lost money, but I believe when Luc Besson was talking about it, he said the way it was financed was some of the distribution deals and things that and how some of the pre-sold rights and things that it didn't lose as much money as it looks like on paper, right?
Man, I don't know how any of that shit works.
It's some funny accounting, but it's but from what I gather, nobody was like super in the hole on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, which is kind of interesting because, in a couple of weeks we're going to talk about our best of 2019, right? And one of my favorite movies of 2019 was Alita: Battle Angel, which was a movie that was made in America, to be released in America, but also expected to make a lot of money in Asia.
Yeah.
I mean, natively it's Japanese.
Did it make
right?
a lot of money in Asia?
Yes.
Good.
Now here's the thing. It was one of those things where it's like most people who saw the movie that weren't critics were like, really want a sequel, really want to know what comes next. We're set up for a sequel. I like this movie. I want more of this stuff because that's another one of those really fascinating world building type of movies.
My biggest complaint about that movie was, where's the last act?
Well, the last act needed to be the second movie, right? Because it basically ends very similarly to one of the books I've read of Battle Angel. But anyway, and it's one of those things where it's like, well, really, for it to be profitable, it has to make $500 million internationally. And it made like 450 or something like that. And then Fox was sold to Disney. So it's like, what's going to happen now? It's like, it didn't miss out by much. And I can tell you, home video probably made up the difference. Easily made up the difference. Because there was enough fans who saw it from that 450 million that can make up 50 million in DVD sales. But
I have to figure that if Cameron wants it to happen, it'll happen.
Probably.
Especially with his, but also, I think Avatar 2 is a big, huge question mark.
Yeah, I know, right?
I really do.
Well, it could be a situation where Cameron wants to do it, Disney doesn't want to do it, and Cameron says, well, screw you, Universal wants to do it.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Paramount wants to do it.
But really, it's interesting. It really could, the financial success of the Avatar sequels could play into a lot of the fate of Alita.
Well, and that's the other question also is would a now 11 years or 12 years since Avatar, will Avatar 2 even be able to recapture any of the hysteria that the first one did? I don't know. I don't know because I want to say no, but then I'll find out it like in 3 days becomes the most highest grossing movie ever or something. But at the same time, it's like,
they're going to have to really charge up that hype machine.
I don't know. Now, I'm sure I know plenty of people, say, of my Facebook friends, who would want to see Avatar 2. None of my good friends give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go see it.
I don't really know anybody who gives a shit.
I know, right?
It's crazy.
I know, it's crazy. And but anyway. But yeah, and it's like the other thing also, it's like how much does Disney want to play hardball with Alita too?
Yeah.
Which is to say, some of the people who really like Alita were quite vocal that they liked it a whole lot more than Captain Marvel. Does Disney want to be a bitch about this?
Right.
And say, well, we're going to stick with the Marvel. We're going to push the Marvel character, not this other character.
What was the rating on Alita? Was it PG-13?
Yep.
Okay.
Which is why it did really well, because a lot of girls saw that movie. I mean, a lot of people grew up reading the book or watching the anime.
It felt tougher than PG-13.
I think it's the scumminess of the Undercity.
Yeah. Some of the violence felt very brutal.
Yeah. But I will also say some of the violence was character building too. Yeah. Like killing that little dog that didn't have anything, that didn't do anything to anybody. Well, that forced Alita to act or whatever, So it's like stuff like that. But so like a lot of people read those books, watched the anime, grew up, had kids, took their kids, particularly girls, to it. I feel like you can make the sequel.
I think it will happen.
And I feel like James Cameron wants it to happen, because this, much like how Valerian is Luc Besson's passion project, Alita is James Cameron's passion project.
Except it's not in some ways, right?
Well, he tried for 20 years to make the movie.
Yeah.
It didn't work out. And at that point, he's like, I'm going to go work on Avatar. Hey, I'm going to handpick another guy who can do this. And then that's when Robert Rodriguez came in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was kind of one of those things where it's like he wanted to do it, and I think Avatar kind of got in the way, and so he's like, I'm going to go focus on getting that restarted. Hey,
that's the real tragedy, I think, is that who knows what cool shit we could have gotten from James Cameron in the last decade if he weren't making copious amounts of Avatar movies. back to back to back sequels.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
But I will say I would love to see more Valerian.
Yes.
Even if it was let's take it back to concept, and maybe try 2 different actors or whatever. I mean, to be honest with you, and I don't want to call it a reboot because I fucking hate that term.
Don't call it a reboot.
But it's it's something that you could take back to that I think can still have an opportunity. It's
Luc Besson claims that a sequel is still possible, and I get the feeling that he wants to continue making these movies. He'll find a way. This is a guy who he's one of the hardest working guys in movies. I mean, he's everywhere. Producing, writing. He writes more than he directs anymore.
Yeah.
He's selling scripts left and right. Like he'll get the funding for another one of these.
Well, and here's the thing also. It's like, let's not forget that I don't think Fifth Element did all that well in the box office.
I don't know.
I think maybe internationally it did.
That became a legit cult classic, though.
Yes. The moment it hit VHS, people found it.
Yeah.
Because I remember going to see it opening weekend, 97 or whatever.
Yeah.
The theater wasn't even 20% full. It's like that was at a time where people didn't really care much for kind of high concept ideas. Now, almost everybody our age loves that movie.
It was a hit.
Was it?
It was $90 million budget, made $264 million at the box office.
Well, that's international too, though.
Still.
Yeah, like I said, internationally it might have been a hit. But I feel like here it wasn't a great big hit until it hit video. But yeah,
at the time of its release, it was the most expensive European film ever made.
Not surprised by that.
And remained the highest grossing French film at the international box office until the release of The Untouchables in 2011.
Wait, the 1987 Untouchables?
No, the Intouchables, 2011.
Oh.
It's a drama.
Okay.
A drama comedy.
There's a comic named Intouchables too.
It was very well regarded movie. I think it won some awards. I never saw it, but I heard it was very good.
Okay.
And it was a phenomenon in France.
Really?
Yeah.
Much like Jerry Lewis.
Sure.
Is a phenomenon in France.
It was
Frenchies.
$11 million budget. This movie Untouchables. It made worldwide. It made $426 million. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's crazy.
That is insane.
Uh-huh.
It's a $500 million comedy drama.
Yeah.
That's insane. With a poster that looks like a movie that gets released in like fucking January just to unload it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. Anyway. All right. So what else you got for Valerian?
Not really much else. I mean, mentioning Fifth Element, it was also shot by Thierry Abergast, who was the DP on Fifth Element. So it's kind of he does a lot of Luc Besson stuff. They work together. He was also the the shooter on Leon, The Professional, and Lucy, which was another huge hit for Luc Besson. But Luc Besson doesn't make a lot of movies anymore.
And what's funny is I don't think Luc Besson's movies get very well criticized by critics.
They're generally not. Yeah,
I think they are probably well received in France by both critics and fans. And over here, I think it's just fans, because I don't think I remember watching the Siskel and Ebert a few weeks ago for The Professional, and they thought it was creepy.
Who did?
Both of them. They did not
really?
like The Professional. They thought the sexualization of Natalie Portman was uncomfortable.
Well, that was in there. That's always been a topic of conversation about that movie. Yeah,
but they uniquely went after that and really didn't like the movie beyond that. I mean,
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, really? It's like that, but that goes to show you those types of movies that catch on with viewers, more than anything.
He made kind of like Luc Besson. He after The Fifth Element, his career got kind of weird from the director chair. He made The Messenger, The Story of Joan of Arc, which I think is a very interesting movie.
Who's in that one?
That's Mila Jovovich. Joan of Arc. Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe it was Dustin Hoffman. I believe was like the devil.
I feel like I watched that movie.
It was good.
Possibly in the theater.
I saw it in the theater.
Huh.
Yeah, it was 1999.
Possibly.
He made a very, very quiet little black and white independent film called Angel A in 2005, which I think I have a copy of somewhere.
Never heard of that.
And then he started making kids films. Arthur and the Invisibles is a French property that I think, again, that he was very, very tied to personally.
Huh.
He made 3 of those movies. The Extraordinary Adventures of Adele, that's another kids movie. So like these French kids movies, essentially. Then he made a couple movies that I don't really know very well. The Lady, I didn't see this. It was a biographical film with Michelle Yeoh, David Thewlis. The Family, which was that weird Michelle Pfeiffer, Robert De Niro mafia movie that nobody saw.
So much so I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. Then Lucy, which made a ton of money.
Which probably got Valerian made.
Probably. And then he actually released a movie this year, Anna.
Oh yeah,
I didn't see
that
this.
was another movie that was critically panned.
Yeah, it's got Luke Evans in it, Cillian Murphy, Helen Mirren. That's probably worth a watch. It looks a little bit like La Femme Nikita-esque.
That's the comparison.
Yeah.
That's made. It's that this is a very pale imitation of. Yeah.
But man, his early career. Ugh. I mean, this was a guy. He made La Femme Nikita, Leon, and The Fifth Element. Those 3 movies. God damn. And then if you go back farther, the Big Blue is a great flick. Kind of a little movie about super competitive deep sea diving. Yeah, like who can dive farthest down without any equipment. Like
that sounds like a fucking nightmare to me.
Yeah, and it's like this whole weird subculture, and he made a movie about it. It's really good. And then Subway, which is amazing. Have you seen Subway? With Christopher Lambert? Subway's great. It also has.
I'm not sure if I've seen anything with Christopher Lambert that's not Highlander shit.
Yeah, it's Christopher Lambert and Isabella and Adjani.
Oh, yeah, she was
in Possession.
And Ishtar.
In Ishtar, yeah. Anyway,
Isabella.
Jean Reno was also in Subway.
Oh,
yeah.
And I've seen a lot of movies that Jean
and
Reno's
that
in,
is like,
including a shitty Godzilla movie.
It's very like French, sort of like 80s French, right? Like it's kind of just very offbeat and weird.
Oh, that sounds like a movie I should rush right out and see.
I have a copy if you want to see it.
Nope.
And I always loved the cover of this movie because it looks like Christopher Lambert is holding a lightsaber.
Oh yeah. Okay, now I'll see that movie.
Yeah. Christopher Lambert holding a lightsaber.
Yeah. It's just him for 2 hours holding a lightsaber.
But anyway.
Anyway.
There's your Luc Besson retrospective.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to some of those someday. Sooner than later, probably Fifth Element.
I think we should do Fifth Element, and I think we should do The Professional. I mean,
so we all be creepy old
we'll be
fucks.
super creepy old fucks, I guess. But man,
hey, but remember when that movie came out,
in that movie,
it was a much closer age.
It's true. Gary Oldman in that movie, man. Wow.
Yeah.
What a performance.
Yeah, where he's the coked up cop.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my final say is I really like this movie.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen this movie since it came out.
Me too.
We watched it in 4K.
Yes.
Looked great.
Yeah, it sounded great.
It did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I very much, if you like sci-fi,
there's something in this.
There's something in this for you to even if you don't maybe like the dialogue or the length, you'll get a like out of the depth of it, of the visuals.
Yep.
So next week, let's talk about. We kind of teased it a little bit ago.
We did. What is it, Jeff?
Watchmen.
Wait, what are we watching?
Watchmen.
Wait, I know we're watching.
Oh
something.
God damn it! don't pull this shit. We're doing shtick. I just came here for toilet paper. God damn it!
Yes, we're watching The Watchmen.
Not The Watchmen.
Watchmen. We're watching Watchmen.
Watchmen. Yeah. So I don't know how much we'll talk about the TV show. This is a show about watching movies, not watching TV. But
yeah, I think
Watchmen is back in the zeitgeist.
Very much so.
And DC will make sure. DC and Warner Brothers will make sure it will forever stay in the zeitgeist. We'll talk a little bit about that next week.
Oh, because of all the after Watchmen stuff.
Well, just completely, totally fucking over Mr. Alan Moore, to the point where he won't work for a major company anymore.
Wow.
Anyway, it takes his name off shit all the time and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't have his name on the TV show. No surprise.
No.
Yeah.
No. He thinks anything that is not in comic book form is garbage.
Ooh.
Actually, he calls it rubbish.
Rubbish.
In his deep, growly, grumpy old man voice.
He is
a character,
grumpy guy.
And he has been on The Simpsons, and it's been phenomenal.
His recent rant about the infanticilism, is that the right way to pronounce that? Effect that comic book movies have had on adults is very interesting. Yeah.
Well, and I kind of agree with that.
There is a lot of truth.
There's a lot of truth in that man's complaints.
Yep.
It may not always be easy to hear, but he has truths that are more true than, say, Martin Scorsese has.
Yeah.
We'll talk all about that next week.
All this and more
on the next episode of Film Seizure. Yeah, I'm excited about this. Another movie that gets debated, but you and I think, fall on the same side of really liking it.
Yes.
So, another movie I think we saw in the theater.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, man, there have been officially over 100 episodes of Film Seizure in our rearview mirror.
That's
Feels
right.
good.
That's right. Feels good.
Feels good. So, yeah. I just want to say, I was going to say something in French, but I don't remember any French.
Yeah.
Then all I can remember is s'il vous plaît.
I can ask you what time it is. Quelle heure est-il?
That does not sound French.
It's the quelle heure est-il?
Did you say that to a Quebec person? Okay, good.
No, I said a lot of...
I don't think they would appreciate that.
I said a lot of merci.
Yeah, sure.
And bonjour.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, merci for
I think
over 100
I can also
episodes.
speak to 12 in French.
Well, sure.
And I know a little French nursery rhyme.
Okay.
That I can pronounce poorly.
It's probably dirty as fuck too.
It's not. It's
okay.
It's a counting rhyme in French nursery rhyme that they taught us in French class to help us learn the numbers.
Luc Besson, we are sorry. Anyway, so until next time when we watch Watchmen.
Ooh.
I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I am Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.
Exit. Your stare makes me freeze, but I can't stay still. Those eyes keep me up longer than any other pill. And I know being together, we feel like forever. But now, more than ever, I feel everything.